In the leadoff spot this morning, we continue with the unfolding situation in Syria as literally major world powers vie for control of Syria. There's a couple of interesting articles I had read this morning regarding that. One is from the American Spectator. It's called "The Approach Syria with a Tragic Mind. U.S. should approach the fall of Assad aware of limitations of American power and the inevitable unintended consequences of hubris." It's a pretty good piece. It goes through basically our hubris after the Iraq War and how we need to be very cautious that right now what we have here is, yes, the fall of a regime that is said to be brutal and many millions of people wanted out, but many millions of people also did not. And Syria is about to enter another civil war this is basically going to be the proxy war battlefield, will be Syria. One of them, but one of the most primary, as one of the group that's in charge now, the Syrian National Army, backed by Turkey. Turkey is NATO. But as you go to a different article, something that I find troubling, but we've been doing this now for a long time. Damascus now ruled by Al-Qaeda in suits as Assad emerges in Moscow. Assad and his family fled to Moscow and were granted political asylum by Putin. They are safe and will never stand trial for anything they've done, but they will live in Russia for the rest of their days. The article goes through how you have Al-Qaeda in suits, specifically how Syria's rebel leader went from radical jihadist to blazer-wearing revolutionary. And it goes through how this man, who has a $10 million reward on him, a $10 million bounty on his head, because he's a career jihadist, how he is now in charge of Syria. And you can't help but wonder, we had him in prison, we released him, then we had a bounty on him, and now he's in charge. It kind of sounds familiar. It kind of sounds like something that we've done in the past, that we had people in prisons, they were then released, and went on to be very prominent leaders in jihadi organizations. Whether this is a coincidence or not, I will leave for you to decide. I continue with the article out of the Spectator. Middle East experts note that Assad's fall was helped along by Israel's attacks on Hezbollah, which have happened over the last, ever since October 7th. They've been attacking Hezbollah positions, especially recently, quite strongly, and Hezbollah being a supporter of the Assad regime. Their fall was the first step in his downfall. You have President Biden's national security advisor saying that U.S. military will not dive into a Syrian civil war, which is just laughable, considering that our troops have been there for well over a decade. They are still there. Why are they there? I don't know. Perhaps what you just saw with the fall of the regime is why they were there. Coincidentally, they are on the most oil-rich oil fields in Syria. I'm sure that's a coincidence. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have moved further into the Golan Heights. How far? There's reports of Israeli troops 40 or 50 miles from Damascus. The strategic ground around the Golan Heights separates Israel and Syria. The Syrian army abandoned its positions, according to Netanyahu. And he calls it a historic day that offers great opportunity, but also fraught with significant dangers. Netanyahu is approaching the developments in Syria with a tragic mind. I actually do kind of like that. Robert Kaplan's phrase to describe a realist approach to international affairs. Let me bring this up for you to see. Netanyahu is approaching the developments in Syria with a tragic mind. Kaplan has written it as an anti-utopian as anti-utopian, appreciates the limitations of human nature and the terrible power of the irrational. I think that the terrible power of the irrational has been on full display for all of us to see for a long time now. A long time. It makes me kind of chuckle because irrationality is basically the way of the world today. Mental illness as lifestyle, being accepted as such. Irrationality, please. And one of the biggest points that I find in this, and I find it to be sad because these people, they never learn. They never learn. Neoconservative voices are already applauding the fall of Assad's regime, with Bill Kristol, the champion of regime change throughout the region, snidely remarking with Assad in Moscow, Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson can now visit their BFFs Assad and Putin on one trip. Kristol wants to shape what happens in Syria as much as possible. Bill Kristol is one of the worst neocons we have. Him and John Bolton have never seen a war they didn't like. They are absolutely some of the worst people to be listening to. And it's my hope that the president-elect, but the president, takes their advice and does exactly what should be done with it. Thrown into the dustbin of history. Nobody has learned from what we did in Iraq. And, this article actually goes on to say it. I'm going to bring that back up for everyone to kind of see here. This is it's astonishing. The editors of the Washington Post urge U.S. leaders to help build a new Syria, forgetting perhaps how we failed to build a new Iraq, or a new Libya, or a new Afghanistan. For the Neocons, Syria is just another land to experiment with nation building. Like Marxists after communism's repeated failures in country after country, the Neocons believe that this may be the time nation building will work. We'll get it right this time. We just didn't do it right. We just didn't do it right. If somebody were to do it correctly, it could be done. But we just didn't do it right. That George Bush, he just didn't listen to us. That Barack Obama, he just didn't listen to us. That Donald Trump, he certainly didn't listen to us. Joe Biden is incapable of listening to us. And Donald Trump will not listen to us again. So, I guess what are we going to do? Overthrow some more countries. Because, hell, it's worked in the... No, it really didn't. Their advice needs to be thrown into the dustbin of history. It really does. And it's clear that the president knows this. And I'll bring up one more portion of this article. Donald Trump seems instinctively to approach international developments with a tragic sensibility, aware of the limitations of American power and potential unintended consequences of unbridled hubris. It is quite possible that none of the outcomes in Syria will benefit U.S. interests, which is what I think is exactly what it's going to be. This isn't going to benefit us at all. How does this benefit us? How? More of our treasure, more of our blood lost? I don't think so. But surely contributing to the chaos will not help matters. We have no vital interest in making Syria a democracy. Surely we have learned the lessons of our failed and costly nation-building efforts in this part of the world. I certainly hope so. And I believe that President Trump has learned those lessons. He didn't support the Iraq War. These lessons are hard learned. It's taken us years to learn these lessons, and a lot of us, Bill Kristol for one, have not learned the lesson. When their time of relevance has expired, which I believe it already has, them with the mainstream media, their relevance has expired. It can't happen too soon. For the sake of us, the sake of Syria, the sake of the world, these people, like the communists, need to be shown for the frauds they are, and that their ideas are worth nothing and worth casting into the dustbin of history. There's nothing about them that need be taken seriously at this point moving forward, except for their danger. They represent a clear and present danger to the United States, its people, and this globe. and need to be taken seriously. Hope you liked it. If you did, like, subscribe, stay sour.